Barron Trump's speech, a new voice on the global stage. The world was taken aback when Barron Trump, the youngest son of former President Donald Trump, took center stage at the United Nations Youth Assembly, known for keeping a low profile historically. Barron stunned the international community with a speech that not only defied expectations but also set off a global conversation about leadership, responsibility, and the power of youth. In shaping the future for years, he had been portrayed as the quiet Trump, and the one family member who largely stayed out of the political and media fray. But with just one speech, he stepped into a role few could have envisioned: an advocate for change, a voice for the next generation, and potentially a future leader in the making. Barron Trump ended up on the world stage despite growing up in one of the most politically charged households in modern history. Barron Trump had largely been kept out of the limelight, while his older siblings, like Ivanka, Donald, Jr., and Eric, actively participated in politics and business. Barron was a mystery to the public. That all changed in early 2025, when the United Nations extended an invitation for him to speak at the prestigious Youth Assembly. The event, known for empowering young leaders, gathers influential voices from around the world to address critical global challenges. The invitation itself sparked immediate media speculation. The speech that shocked them. As Barron Trump walked into the hall, the crowd fell silent. The world held its breath as it waited to hear a restrained, conservative speech. Instead, what they were given was an articulate, poised young man telling the world its most urgent needs, opening words that set the tone. Barron got it started with a statement that quickly shot attention to its height. I stand before you today, not as the son of a former president, but as a young person who, like many of you, envisions a world that is more united, innovative, and prepared for the challenges ahead. With these words, he distanced himself from his family's political legacy, making it clear that his message was not about partisan agendas, but about global responsibility. Climate change, a non-negotiable issue. One of the most surprising moments of Barron's speech was his passionate stance on climate change. The health of our planet is not a debate. It is a responsibility. We cannot afford to let politics divide us on an issue that affects every nation, every community, and every individual. This statement alone sent shockwaves through the room. Given the Trump administration's previous skepticism toward climate policies, many expected Barron to avoid the topic. Instead, he tackled it head-on, calling for increased investment in renewable energy, stricter environmental regulations, and a commitment from world leaders to take decisive action. His words echoed throughout the climate activism world, raising questions in many minds. Was Barron Trump the voice of a new generation breaking away from past political ideologies? The future of technology, progress with a conscience. Barron turned to another critical global issue: the rapid progress of technology and artificial intelligence. Innovation must never outpace ethics. The power of technology and automation must be guided by moral responsibility, not just economic gain. His statement caught the attention of tech leaders, especially the CEOs of gigantic corporations like Google, Microsoft, and Tesla. Who reacted to his statement. Some even requested that he speak at sessions on the ethics of developing AI, where his input transcended politics into industry leadership circles. Education. The equalizer: education is not a privilege, it is a right, and until every child in every nation has access to quality learning, our work is not finished in this piece. He set out to include the necessity of this new global revolution in learning. Barron reinforced his words with better funding for schools in remote regions, enhancing access to learning, and greater international cooperation in bringing about an equal balance between knowledge from the West and developing nations. Through his education reform campaign, humanitarian organizations, such as UNICEF and UNESCO, publicly supported him. Unit in globality over division. Perhaps the most impressive aspect of Barron's speech was his call for unity in a rapidly dividing world. Our challenges do not belong to one nation or one party. They belong to humanity, and our solutions must be global. He called on world leaders to put aside political differences and work together to end poverty, human rights abuses, and international conflicts. His message, one of diplomacy and cooperation, was in stark contrast to the often confrontational approach associated with his family's political history. Reaction. The world responds to Barron Trump's words, standing ovation at the end, as Barron finished his speech with the words, "The future is not something we wait for. It is something we build together." The auditorium became a tidal wave of applause. Representatives from different countries, many who had come there with an air of skepticism, were visibly moved. Some declared it as one of the most inspiring speeches ever delivered by a youth. At the media reaction, tile and criticism given the nature of Amari's speech. Reactions in the media were naturally mixed. Right-wing media, some conservative media, news outlets hailed the speech by Barron as proof that the legacy of Trump is changing. Barron was seen by some opinionists as potential presidential candidate himself. Leftist media, in the liberal and left-leaning press, it has been noted how mature and dignified Barron sounded. However, some doubts were raised that whether he composed the speech alone or with assistance from his handlers. Others brought up inconsistencies of his speech contradicting his dad's policies. International media. Global coverage was generally favorable. European and Asian news sources pointed out his messages of unity and environmental action. Some outlets said Barron is the Trump who talks to the world. Ironically, perhaps the most interesting response came from Donald Trump. While he often spoke widely and publicly about the accomplishments of his family, he largely did not comment on Barron's words. When finally asked about it in an interview, he simply responded, "I think Barron did great. He's a smart young man." This brief and neutral response fueled speculation. Was he proud, concerned, or was he deliberately staying quiet to let his son define his own public image? What's next for Barron Trump, with his first major public address behind him? The world is left wondering. What comes next for Barron Trump? A future in politics. Many feel that Barron has the future of politics ahead of him. His ease of relating with his audience, clear articulation of complex issues, and motivation of young minds point to following in his father's footsteps, although perhaps differently. Global change champion, some think Barron may not pursue political careers, but instead leverage his position to mobilize more people in the international space. With education, climate change, and technology ethics, some of the leading issues. He may grow into a great voice for international affairs, a way back to privacy. Despite his eloquent speech, Barron may decide to go back to private life. Since he had avoided public life earlier, this could be a one-time appearance rather than the start of a larger political career. Conclusion. A new leader in the making. No matter what the future brings, one thing is sure. The world will witness Barron Trump in a different light than people had anticipated. His speech to the United Nations was not only a moment, but a statement. Whether or not he ends up being the political leader or a global voice for an activist cause, or some other endeavor entirely bent us, the world will be looking, because for the first time Barron Trump has said something, and everyone is listening.